When we return to our planet, the High Court may well sentence you to torture.
He likes movies, we like movies. Septum Sin versus the world. Septum Sin versus the world. Septum Sin versus the world. Septum Sin versus the world.
I'd buy that for $1.
Greetings! You're watching Septum Sin vs. the World. I'm Septum Sin. Today, I want to talk about a series of films. Usually I take these one by one, but I feel, since I watched them all kind of back to back to back, that this series is best talked about as a whole. And that is the Things series. This is a series of 5 films, of course, produced by David Sterling. Each one of them having their own special je ne sais quoi. 1 through 4 of Things kind of follows the same premise, which is there's an overarching plot, and there are 2 stories that are semi-related to that plot. So it's sort of an anthology film and sort of not one. And each of these involves these things, these creatures. And each one of these movies does that to varying levels of success. So I'm just going to go over these one by one, and then I'm going to talk about what separates one from the other. Things 1 is essentially a woman is caught preparing to sleep with another woman's husband, and she says, well, I'll let you go, or I'll let you live, if you listen to 2 tales and give me your thoughts on those 2 tales. And that's the essential Things. The second film, Things 2, is about a pizza delivery girl that delivers a pizza to a horror writer's house, sort of like a Stephen King type person's house. And he decides he's going to try out a couple of his tales on her. Now, Dead Time Tales, which I'll get to a little bit later, or Things 3, Old Things, is about this guy that's in an antique shop. And the antiques that come out have this relation to the different stories that have been told. Things 4, it's about this woman who comes in there for this experiment that they get paid for, and she's looking for her sister who also went there. So this features 2 tales that follow along where they went. Things 5 breaks the story by essentially just kind of being a bunch of people around a kind of monster apocalypse. It kind of just goes to different people within the apocalypse of monsters being released and what happens to them. So, let's talk about the Things movies. Really and truly, it needs to be divided up. The first 3 and the last 2. This is very similar to Camp Blood, where Camp Blood kind of peaked at Within the Woods, in my opinion. So have the Things films. Now with Camp Blood, quality went sort of down, then way down, and then with 666 and so on, it's been kind of back up again, but still not as good as the first 3 for me. I'm not sure yet This has only had 2 films after the original, and there's a long way. I think the third movie was like 1998, and this movie was 2016. So there's been almost 20 years between. So when you think about that, you can understand that, again, the series is just kind of getting rebooted again, so to speak. So again, needs to catch its breath and find its place, which I think these 2 films are. This one sort of serves as a bridge between the old and the new, and this is kind of playing around with the new format. So, while we talk about these 3, the tales are pretty cool. This one has a couple cool tales. One about this person who is quite angry about these women of the night have set up in his town, and he has this thing that he uses to kill people that he does not like. And that's what that is about. I'm trying to think of what the other one was about. Oh, the other one was about these this thing that came back to life, basically after being betrayed and killed by her husband. The compilation came back to life. These were really cool tales and somewhat creepy. The thing construction, though, at the B level, and again, I love B movies. I love small budget, so I try to give them a bit of a what's the word? I give them a little bit more leeway. But this one, I felt like the effects were really good. I felt the monsters were pretty cool. Definitely some creepiness and creepy vibes in this film. This film, I felt, up the ante quite a bit. It moved it from just simply the original things concept of here are 2 stories. This tied them all together, at least somewhat loosely. And I thought the overarching story was much more interesting. The first story was really good. I loved the first story. It was about the of course now I'm forgetting it now. The first one was actually pretty good. It was, again, another one about some people who are kind of going to run away with one another, and they were going to use a thing to attack them. Attack, like, the one that they didn't want in the relationship. And I thought that was really well done. The second one I thought kind of dragged. The werewolfy type one kind of dragged a bit. But at the same time, it had some very decent effects, pretty cool makeup, and I really enjoyed the way it all tied together at the end of the film. This one is probably tied for my favorite of the series. Things 3 is the only one that you cannot get directly from David Sterling. This is kind of the oddball of it. I think there are some copies that actually have the Things 3 title on it. I don't know all of the details that surround it. I've got a cat that's trying to get on camera again. This is why we lock him up on Mondays when we regularly film. But I don't know what happened, what got them labeling it Dead Time Tales, but if you want to understand why it jumped from 2 to 4, this is why. This is still pretty readily available. You just gotta know what you're looking for. Which is kind of sad, because this is probably tied for my favorite film in the series. I love the antique store storyline that goes around it. And the 2 tales. You got the one about the mobsters and the other one about the dominatrix. Both of them are really cool. There is some nudity in it, but it's more tasteful, and I'll talk about tasteful nudity as we get to the latter half of the series. This one tied it together really well. I really liked the overarching story almost as much as Things 2. But as a whole, this is a very solid trilogy. You get these 3 films, in my opinion, you are set. They are really good. Alright, let's talk about Things 4. I'm glad to get this because it has 3 YouTubers I like. I really enjoy having Cool Duder in anything that I have. I don't know what it is. It's fun watching him act on screen. But also there's Danny the Cinestalker, and there is Luna Meow in this. So those are some fun things. The 2 tales are pretty interesting. Again, it's about one's about brain-eating worms, and the other one, well, let's just say that it's alright. The monster design in this is probably the worst. They really try to integrate CG and not necessarily a good way. Though I did think that they tried, and I felt like this was closer to these 3 originals than the other. But still, overall, this one, I felt like it had a good concept but kind of fell flat on almost all points. It was watchable, it was okay, but it was not the greatest. So again, grain of salt, but highlight is Cool Duder is on this. Finally, we get to this. The production value is much higher than the last one. I feel like they did good by going back to practical effects, and the monster design was kind of fun. I did enjoy that. Okay, now I remember what this was. There were a mind-controlling octopus was part of that. But this didn't really go into vignettes. It kind of meandered from character to character, and monsters come around, monsters kill and introduce the characters, and then it went on to kill them all off, pretty much. It starts with a very long jogging scene, which I have to wonder. There's some things in this that I wonder about. Did someone say, you know what we need? Shower scenes. Lots and lots of shower scenes. And we want to make sure that we represent all body types. And I give them kudos because these are typically not the types that you would see in the regular horror movie, but it's just over the top. There is something to be said about too much of a good thing. And though I felt like they did a pretty good job about when they incorporated nudity into this film, it was not a good job incorporating it into this. It was way too much, and I felt kind of dirty watching it for the most part. I didn't... it was... By the time we reached like the 4th or 5th shower scene, I'll admit I was laughing because it was just so over the top. Just, I wonder how many more of them they're going to have. But as a whole, I can't really say whether this was a step down. I felt this was more of a sidestep. So these two were kind of in the low end. I would actually think this one is a little bit lower because it doesn't have Cool Duder in it. It doesn't have some of the. It doesn't have some of the things that would actually draw me to watching it. I'm really kind of hoping that the series finds its feet. But that's how it was with Camp Blood. Camp Blood found its feet pretty quickly Well, not really quickly. It had to take some time. It took 3 films to find its feet. Or 3 one okay and 2 bad films to find its feet. So we still got a little ways to wait before that goes. But let's get to some ratings. All of these come with basic features, mainly just trailers. So at the end of the day, we're just rating the movies. Things 1, solid 7. Things 2, I'd say a 7.5, but again, we'll keep it at a 7 for there. Things 3, definitely a solid 7. Things 4, a 5. It was watchable, but not great. Things 4, sorry. Things 5, I would have to give that a 3. I may watch it again. I mean, the shower scenes and so on, I might just fast forward through a lot of that. But I might watch this again, especially if Thing 6 comes out, and I'm sure it will, and continues on to this, because I feel like this is a lot like some of the Evil Bong movies lately, that they want to try and continue on the kind of aimlessness that they had here, and maybe have a coherent story between like the 2 or next 3. So I will probably watch this again, and maybe I'll bring it up to a 4 or a 5 in a bigger context. So, with that being said, would I recommend the Things series? Yes, I would. I think that these types of series are great. I love B-movie series, and this is one I've ignored for far too long. As far as the latter part of the series, I would also recommend getting that. I do not regret having Camp Blood 4 and 5, which are probably my 2 least favorite of that series, because they help tie together Camp Blood 6, which is, in my opinion, the best film since the original trilogy, and the others that follow, which are pretty good and solid slasher films. So I think 6 is probably going to complete the transformation from this to the new method that they're using, and probably by Thing 7 we're going to see some really good stuff. So where can you get this? Well, I say, as always, go directly to David Sterling. He usually can get you good deals, and they run pretty well. Some of them even as cheap as $5 sometimes. You can get Things 1, 2, 4, and 5 pretty cheaply. Now this one is the hard one. So I've done a lot of the work for you in giving you this title, Dead Time Tales. If you look up that, it's still quite available online. It is out of print, but that doesn't mean it can't be obtained. I would like to see a kind of Sterling type cover. I really think that the covers that Sterling does for these are really good. These especially, I like this type of artwork. He does a really good job. I'm not exactly sure where this one was going. I think it's more of an old school. So I would love to actually have an official Things 3 with Things 3 on it, but I am glad to finally have the whole series. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this particular episode, and I hope you too check out the Things series. So, let's go on and meet you at the YouTube shoutout. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
and welcome to the YouTube Shoutout. This is the portion where we talk about YouTube channels that I enjoy a lot and want to share my enjoyment with all of you, few but valuable listeners. Today we're going to be talking about the Very Unofficial Travel Guide, or you can look it up as Very Unofficial Travel Guide. Guides. This one is another travel channel. Don't worry, I don't have a lot of these. This is, I think, one of the last ones that I'm covering. Much like Don's Family Vacations, this one also covers a lot of cruises, but does cover other vacations. Like, he does a lot of Disney stuff. Recently, he did a Canary Islands resort type thing, so you get to see different places, different types of things. If you've ever wanted to go cruising, I would definitely look up both him and Don when it comes to these things. They're both pretty personable as far as talking to you online. They both are pretty enjoyable to listen to. This one here is a bit bigger on level, though Don is catching up. And he is not a travel guide, at least not to my knowledge. A lot of the videos are very fun. Again, I like to imagine that I am whisked away somewhere that's not necessarily here, which is why I've got these. These are my escape. But sometimes I like to picture myself on a nice vacation, and I think to myself, what type of ship would I like to go on? What kind of cruise? This one here is one that I listened to a lot when it came to cruising tips and things that I wanted to do to go away and get away from it all. This was what it came about. This helped me come about with my first cruise. Matter of fact, it's kind of funny because after our second cruise, he was boarding the ship when we were leaving the ship, because he was actually on board for the next cruise when we were on the Anthem of the Seas last year. So it's kind of funny in that way. It is entertaining. I do hope that you get to watch it, and if you watch the other channel, which doesn't have a lot of activity on it, that Nerd Couple, when we do our vacation one, I actually say this bathroom is not Morgan approved. This is what I mean. So you need to check out the channel in order to understand what I mean by that. So I hope you've enjoyed this YouTube shout out. Check it out. And hopefully, you too will catch the travel bug. This has been Septum Sen, and I will see you on the next one. Goodbye.